Ciao, what's poppin' YouTube? So, I was in a Chapters the other day, looking for a few books. They didn't have any of them, and so I started thinking about what would annoy the liberal arts major behind the counter the most. So naturally, I went with Ayn Rand.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me! Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me! Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me!
They didn't have any of the famous ones like Atlas Shrugged or Fountainhead, all they had was Anthem. So I bought it and gave it a read, because surprisingly I've never actually read Ayn Rand before, and well, honestly, she gave me really similar vibes to a Satanist. So let's just slap into it. The book opens on Equality 72521. Yes, that's this guy's name. He is sitting in a hole underground writing by candlelight. He lives in a post-apocalyptic commie dystopia where everything is 100% collective. He doesn't even know the word I exists. In fact, just saying the word I, which is the forbidden word, will get you burned at the stake. He just refers to himself and his comrades as we, and everything is controlled by a strict top-down government. Anyway, when people become adults in this society, they get assigned a job that they will do for the rest of their lives until they turn around 35 and go to the old folks' home. Equality 72521 wants to be a scholar as he likes thinking and is super duper smart and inquisitive. He is basically a spirit animal for every nerdy 14-year-old edgelord. He is your average r/I'm very smart character and gets progressively more insufferable as the book goes on. Anyway, so he wants to be a scholar, but he ends up as a street sweeper. So he is literally your average artsy 14-year-old edgelord. I feel really, really judged. Anyway, he is initially really happy about it. He serves his brothers, commie, blah, 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 blah. However, everything changes when he and his friend, International 48818, find some spooky metal tracks from the unmentionable times, which is just our modern day, basically. Anyway, he begins to explore it and finds this neat little tunnel where he sets up shop. Mr. Worldwide is spooked by the whole thing and dips, but Mr. Equality keeps sneaking away from society to conduct spooky little experiments down there. He brings a candle and writes his experiences, which is illegal to do. Anyway, one day while out sweeping the outskirts of the city, he meets a girl called Liberty 53000. He then begins to simp hard for her. Simp! Simp! And realises that he fancies her, which is illegal. Anyway, he eventually finds himself talking to her. He tells her that he has come up with a name for her, which is the Golden One. This dude's a fucking edgelord. Anyway, she calls him the Unconquered, which is also pretty edgy, so, you know, they're perfect for each other. And all of this is very illegal. Anyway, he manages to reinvent electricity and get a light functioning. This is huge, as the invention of the candle is like the biggest deal ever in this society. It took 14 people to come up with it.
And let me tell you that we are really changing the world as we know it. The world is not anymore the way it used to be. No, no, no.
So there is going to be a meeting of the scholars soon, and so the Unconquered takes his light there. However, the nerds try to kill him for basically breaking every law ever and subverting their genius. He manages to escape and runs off into the forest. And then the book spirals into random bullshit territory. So he is hyped to have left Commieland. He kills an animal just to eat it and feels fantastic. However, he starts to get upset because his e-girl isn't with him. But then she just appears in the forest because now she's simping for him. Simp! So he goes from iDubbbz to Andrew Tate in like the flip of a hat. And he and the Golden One run off to live as ANCAPs in the wilderness. They find an old house, and my boy reads up on the history of the Earth. He finds more electricity and spits a thesis on capitalism, anarchy, objectivism, etc., etc., and it all sounds really satanic, but we'll get there later. Anyway, he names himself Prometheus, as he is going to steal fire from the gods and lead the plebs into truth. He plans to have a kid with this girl, who he now calls Gaia.
I like to have children!
And then go back into Commieland and rescue a few of the true thinkers. They will then start an ANCAP society in the wilderness and live happily ever after. So, there is a lot to talk about here. First off, this book is way ahead of its time. Not only is it written in an almost modern style that is very easy to read, this is basically a proto-Orwell novel, at least for the first half. This book reads like a precursor to 1984 or A Brave New World. The vaguely communist dystopia feels really similar to many of the commonly cited great works of dystopian fiction much later. The entire book is extremely anti-communism and by extension anti-collectivism, which makes sense as Rand herself fled the Soviet Union to the United States of America. It's easy to see how the main character is a self-insert. Rand clearly feels that she was awake to the lies of the commies and had to flee to America, which in this book is the freedom of the wilderness. The entire thing reads like a dramatized version of her own journey, and as such, I do brand the main character as a self-insert. There is even a chapter where he straight up spews his, or rather, Rand's philosophy to the audience with only the most basic veneer of this being fiction. The book is extremely pro-freedom, pro-capitalist, and anti-government, with the main character's end goal being starting his own mini-country in the wilderness where they hunt and eat and answer only to themselves. Yeah, it's like I said, it's very ANCAP. However, the final thesis from Prometheus, whilst being ANCAP, actually reads more like a Satanist manifesto.
You people are Satanists!
Like, scarily so, to the point where if you told me this book was written by a Satanist, instead of, Ayn Rand, I would 100% believe you, and would take it as, like, the pinnacle of Satanist fiction. So let's unpack this. So the Unconquered's monologue at the end is a scathing dismissal of collectivism, which is pretty standard modern Tory affair. It dismisses collectivism by saying that the progress of the great are hampered by them having to care for and be equal to the weak. Rand clearly has no desire to aid the stupid, poor, or unskilled, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or rather boomerish. The whole thing continues on about how you should be allowed to build your own society, hunt your own food, and should not have to pay anything to your brothers unless you want to. Once again, all very standard right-wing philosophy. However, it takes a sharp turn into direct Satanism. Rand offers the idea of discarding all other moral obligations and crowning yourself as the god of your universe. She states, through her self-insert, that the ultimate end to all means is personal happiness, that someone should only act to aid one's own ends and to further yours and your family's lot in life with no regard for God, nature, or the other. She also states that men were enslaved to God and freed themselves, and now we must free ourselves from society, which is extremely similar to standard Satanism. The worship of the self, hedonism and selfishness, extreme materialism, and the idea of one's own self as the ultimate moral good is exact textbook Satanism. Even the scene where the Unconquered chooses his name, he says something along the lines of that it is a curse to be the bringer of light. This sounds like an out-and-out reference to Satan, whose name Lucifer loosely translate into Lightbringer. So that's the themes and philosophy. It goes far past commie's bad, cappy's good. Was Ayn Rand the proto-Satanist? Maybe. Most Satanists now would definitely distance themselves from Ayn Rand due to, her being really closely affiliated with the right wing. But to be honest, Satanism is an extremely right-wing theology. Far more so than Jesus' brand of Christianity, which ironically pairs closer to socialism than capitalism. But that's a topic for another video. Anyway, that was Anthem by Ayn Rand. Great world building, super ahead of its time, but very preachy in all the worst ways at the end. Overall, 3 out of 5. I would look out for some more of her more famous books to see how they compare in the future. And if you want to read some of my, not more famous books, you can. Like, subscribe, share, you know the drill with this website, comrades. Thank you.
Buy my book. Buy my book before it's too late, people.
I won't do what you tell me.